All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. And I'm going to talk today about the wireless technology health effects. I'm Executive Director of Physicians for Safe Technology, and I'm a surgeon. I'm not an oncologic surgeon. I'm a plastic surgeon. I trained at Stanford. And after witnessing the epidemic of breast cancer, I began to study toxins in the environment. And through our local county medical association and the California Medical Association, I authored resolutions and worked on resolutions on a variety of toxins, including BPA, fracking chemicals, pesticides, triclosan, flame retardants, and a number of others that affect our health. And we are all familiar with toxins, especially in this group. We all know that toxic exposures cause disease, including cancer, reproductive failure, brain dysfunction, autoimmune disease, developmental abnormalities. It's interesting that we have an inventory of about 40,000 chemicals, but if people ask this question, how many people know how many of these chemicals have been banned in Europe? Well, about now, the latest came out recently, a couple of days ago, about 2,000 chemicals, and they're working on more. In the United States, how many have been banned or restricted? About 14. So we have a long way to go there, as well as with wireless radiation, as we're going to find out. So I became interested in wireless radiation, started working on this, knowing that now we're surrounded by more and more wireless radiation, this mix of frequencies and all these wireless devices, pretty much, all the time now in our daily environments. I wrote several articles on wireless technology and public health over the years, including a published article, 5G wireless telecommunications expansion, public health, and environmental implications when 5G came out. I'm briefly going to just show you the electromagnetic spectrum. And of course, electromagnetic radiation is represented by the electromagnetic spectrum. On the left, you see non-ionizing radiation. That is what we're going to talk about today. It's also called radio frequency radiation. Has other names, but radio frequency and electromagnetic radiation. On the right is ionizing radiation. And as you know, with ionizing radiation, an electron is bumped off of the atoms, so they call it ionizing, whereas non-ionizing, that doesn't happen, although we're going to talk about the effects of non-ionizing radiation. Radio waves are interesting in that they're very large, the size of buildings. When you get to Wi-Fi radiation and cell phone radiation, it's inches to feet. And then when you get to 5G, which is millimeter waves, you're talking about really tiny waves that are the size of insects, and that's how they can have negative effects. So wireless technology has promised us a lot, and they advertise fast downloads, hyperconnection, economic boost, more jobs, smart machines. It's going to be better living through technology. But as we know, there are perils to this. And it's not only physical and mental health effects, there's environmental effects, privacy and security issues, uses a huge amount of energy, talk about Bitcoin, and there's just all of that, astronomy and weather forecast interference, and e-waste. So that's just a few of the many problems with this. Now, the physicians are getting more interested in this, and there's more conferences on this. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this at the end, but I've given several talks at different conferences, and it's becoming more and more of an issue as people are realizing these problems. I got involved with this initially about 11 years ago when they wanted to place a cell tower on my daughter's school. And I had no idea at the time that there was any issue at all because I'd studied other toxins and I wondered. So I started looking into it and found indeed there were reason for concern. And some of these issues with cell tower health effects, I found out. So I began working on this and dove into the research, and I learned a lot. And I'm going to share that with you. So I learned that wireless radiation passes through bodies and organisms. It's absorbed by anything containing water. It can interfere with and harm cellular biological processes, not through heat, which it is now regulated through only heat. Wireless radiation is a mix of artificial frequencies, and we're electrical beings. It really makes sense. Our brain, our heart, our nervous system, and our endocrine system all work on tiny electrical signals. And so it makes sense that it could interfere. I also learned that there are about 7 decades of military and basic science harm from radiofrequency radiation, and it also affects all living organisms. It can act as an environmental and human toxicant, and the effects are cumulative. I wondered why there was such controversy over harm, and I learned that it is a complex subject. It's multidisciplinary. It takes engineers, biologists, people involved in medicine, physics, and math. Some of these articles that you try to read, there's some you just can't even read. So because it's interdisciplinary, a lot of times those disciplines don't talk to each other, and they don't understand. Engineers think everything's fine. They do this amazing job with all this technology that connects us, but they don't really understand the interference in terms of our biology. The effects are also variable and nonlinear. People understand endocrine disruptors. The dose doesn't always make the poison, and sometimes lower doses can be more toxic. The studies are variable. There's various conditions and subjects, so they don't all wind up with the same conclusion. And also, the telecommunications industry is heavily influential. So why doesn't everyone react the same? We have some people who react and some don't. Well, it's because, as we all know, we're all biologically different. There's differences in genetics, nutrition, and exposures that we have, toxic exposures. For instance, the people who have the BRCA gene, they have an increased risk of ovarian and breast cancer because their DNA repair mechanisms are defective. Some people have allergies to peanuts, and others have allergies to blueberries and lemons. More and more we see. People have different reactions to drugs. You can have multiple toxic exposures that will make things more confusing. And, we have an LD50. Drugs have this. So half the people given a certain dose will have a bad outcome, and half won't. So variable response is common. There's also variability in exposure and effects. So this is Dr. Hardell's recent article and talking about exposure levels from different cell phone base stations, and location, distance, power, the frequencies matter, modulation. Buildings are in the way, trees and walls are in the way. So all this has to be taken into account. One of the biggest questions that has come up is there a biologic mechanism of harm? And people argue this and say there's no mechanism at all. So how can we say that it's non-ionizing, no effect at all? Well, winds up that the physicists and biologists, they tend to argue with each other. The physicists say, well, ionizing radiation, it breaks the bonds, it moves electrons, and it's ionizing, and non-ionizing radiation isn't strong enough to injure these cells. But the biologists say adverse biological effects are demonstrated in vivo and in vitro, and oxidation is a universal non-thermal mechanism of toxicity. So if we look at the mechanism of action for chemical toxicity, and many of you are aware of this, I'm sure, DDT creates reactive oxygen species. Lead, mercury, arsenic, organophosphate pesticides, dioxins all induce oxidative stress. By a different mechanism, they deplete the major intracellular antioxidant glutathione. Diesel exhaust induces reactive oxygen species in bronchial tissues, and oxidation causes rust. It's the non-biological equivalent is rust. So we know oxidative stress creates inflammation, and that creates human disease. There's a lot written on this. It's become very mainstream. And inflammatory inflammation is linked to cancer, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, aging, and metabolic disease. But what about wireless radiation? Well, winds up that oxidative stress is evident as a biologic mechanism with regards to radiofrequency radiation as well. And there's damage to DNA, lipids, and membranes. Yakomenko had his very well-known article showing 100 studies showed oxidation, and Dr. Lai in Bioinitiative report, he's looked at the studies and found that 203 out of 225 studies, 89% that showed effects of oxidation. So it's pretty well established that this is a biologic mechanism of harm. Also, if you look at studies on cells, and there's oxidative damage to cells, sperm and ovaries, nerve cells, cardiac cells, blood cells, immune system has oxidative effects. and antioxidants reverse the effects. You can find these on our website, mdsafetech.org. So there are studies also that link radiofrequency radiation, oxidative stress to inflammation and modern disease, including cancer, reproductive harm, neurologic disease, cardiac disease, and immune suppression. What are the short-term and long-term effects of radiofrequency radiation? Well, short-term electro hypersensitivity can occur, and that's a phenomenon where individuals experience adverse health effects while using or being in the vicinity of devices emanating electromagnetic fields. Bevington, he has one of the most thorough articles on this, and he reviewed a bunch of articles on electrohypersensitivity, and he found that many are disabled, they can't work, and you won't be seeing them on the streets. Electrohypersensitivity is symptoms include headaches, nausea, fatigue, brain fog, insomnia, heart palpitations, and they're very similar to the same symptoms that you see in people who have chemical sensitivities as well. In the article, he notes that 5 to 30% of people have mild electrohypersensitivity, 1.5 to 5% have moderate electrohypersensitivity, and 0.65% are have restricted access to work, and that is they can't go to work or be out in cities and so forth. And that is an equivalent of about 2 million people in the United States. So one of the first people that I met who had electrosensitivity was Dr. Scott Eberly, and he wrote this wonderful article called What's the Diagnosis, Doctor? He's a hospice physician in Petaluma, and he developed electrohypersensitivity after a carbon monoxide poisoning in his house. And after that, he recovered. PG&E fixed the problem, but he recovered, but found that he could no longer be near any wireless devices, a cell phone, a computer. All of them gave him these unusual symptoms, and he really wasn't aware of anything before. But he had his colleagues help him, and he blinded himself and said, I don't know, this is weird. How come and they would help him and figure this out, that he really was electrosensitive. He's a wonderful writer. He wrote 2 articles. One is What's the Diagnosis, Doctor? You can find it online. It's on our website, as well as this article, An Underworld Journey, Learning to Cope with Electromagnetic Hypersensitivity. And he just notes how isolated he's felt, and difficult to tell people you're electrosensitive because they basically think this is a psychological problem. Well, if it is a psychological problem, it'd be interesting because NASA did the study in 1981 of microwave illness, which is also another name for electrohypersensitivity. And they looked at workers who worked in radar and so forth, and found a number of them were developing symptoms, same exact symptoms: headaches, irritability, fatigue, dizziness. They were nervous, they were depressed, they lost their memories, they had breathing difficulties, and they developed muscular pain. Firefighters also developed health effects when cell towers were placed near their fire stations. And these first responder cell towers, when they were put in within about a week, then firefighters noted these symptoms, same symptoms, and they had unexplained anger and memory loss. Firefighters got lost on 911 calls in the city they grew up in. Some had forgotten how to do CPR. It was so profound and disturbing that the International Association of Firefighters in 2004, they led a study and developed a policy that said we need to really prevent cell towers from being placed on fire stations. So they actually have been successful in California. And California AB 57, which is in 2016, and AB 537 in 2021, all exempt cell tower placement due to health effects. So it's written and codified in our California law. It's kind of surprising, but they have more power. When I asked one of the firefighters in Sacramento about it when I was there, he said, "Well, he said we're working on our own." I said, "What about us?" He said, "We're just working on our own." So it does just let you know how the politics are run, if you didn't know that. So Havana Syndrome. Many of you have heard of this, and this is These people have experienced, diplomats, their families and pets have experienced these unusual neurologic symptoms in Havana in 2016, but also China 2018, Austria 2021, Arlington in 2021, and recently in 2022, I believe that there have been reports of this in the White House as well. And these incapacitating symptoms are very similar to those of electro hypersensitivity. And the National Academy of Sciences report in 2020 concluded this was due to pulsed microwave radiation. Dr. Beatrice Gollum has written a wonderful article on that. She is a UC San Diego professor, has written this article, Diplomat's Mystery Illness and Pulse Radiofrequency Microwave Radiation in 2018. And she came to the same conclusion. And this was instrumental also in the report. So what about Havana Syndrome in other parts of the world? Well, in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, 17 people developed similar electro hypersensitivity symptoms when a cell tower was placed in a neighborhood. And they've been really fighting this. The blog is on our website on the front page. You can read about it. And this is disturbing because as more and more cell towers are being placed in cities due to the push for 5G, this is already happening in other parts and becoming more commonplace. What are the long-term health effects of wireless radiation? Well, long-term effects, we have, behavior, long-term effects neurologically have been demonstrated in a number of larger studies. I won't go over all of these. You can find them on our website and go back and look at these. But they found that association of ADHD and mother-child pairs through Dr. Leah Kaiser and several other studies have found this as well. And that makes sense because wireless radiation is neurotoxic. The basic science, you can find it on our website, shows loss of brain cells in the hippocampus, which is the memory center, demyelination of nerve cells, decrease in neurotransmitter levels, disruption of the blood-brain barrier, and then DNA damage. So it's very surprising when you start looking at it. I had no idea all this research was there, and more and more. So if you look at wireless radiation and blood-brain barrier, Salford, he's done the most work on this, and he found there's increased permeability of the blood-brain barrier in this last 4 weeks. And this is in a lower level of EMR. There's just 2 hours of exposure can cause leakage of albumin up to 8 weeks. And he also demonstrated neuronal damage in the cortex, hippocampus, and basal ganglia. We all know children are more vulnerable to toxic exposures, but especially to radiofrequency radiation because their skulls are thinner. They have a higher water content in the brain. There's more absorption of radiation, 2 to 5 times more, and their organ systems are not developed. And this is a demonstration of the cell phone and virtual reality on adult and child. An article by Fernandez and Deborah Davis in Environmental Research showing that it does get absorbed through our brains. This is a slide from the EMF conference, and Dr. Davis again is explaining how the absorption of radiation from just a tablet that's about 6 inches from a child's head. And you can see that this absorption, this is the SAR levels. Now, they do diminish toward the back of the head, but there's significant absorption in the brain of a child. Risk to reproduction. So this is another health effect people have not been really much aware of, but are getting more knowledgeable about. On our website, you can see there's 54 studies on sperm damage. They show structural alteration, motility, DNA, and testosterone effects. There's also ovarian damage in 9 studies. And I think this is significant because kids will use that laptop, girls and boys, but girls also will place cell phones and laptops near their reproductive organs. And some of the studies showing oxidation to the ovaries over time are quite alarming and indicate that maybe this is one aspect of infertility people haven't thought about, is that your ovaries can age through oxidation. So another problem. And embryo damage, 6 studies, and also Dr. Dikun Lee at Kaiser in 2017. He had a wonderful, well-researched article on miscarriage, and he took 913 pregnant women and he put exposometers on them to measure the levels of radiofrequency radiation. And it's a very robust study. He's an excellent researcher. He controlled for other factors. And he found that there was a 3-fold increase in miscarriage with everyday exposure in the highest tier. So this study has been unrefuted. People have tried to do this, but it's so well done. It was in the New York Times, and I had people coming to me and saying, Cindy, I thought you were kind of crazy with this Wi-Fi stuff, but now I've seen this article, there may be something to it. So he's done a good job. What about cell tower health effects? This comes up often because of all the cell towers that are now being placed in cities, and they're fighting it. There's many of these studies on our website. If we look at cell towers in cancer, Dode in 2011, he found, he did a study in Brazil, and they have an excellent health system, and they look at all these cancer cases, and they know, and he did a really wonderful study and found significant increase in cancer within 500 meters. Caron in 2010 looked at 8 of 10 studies, and they showed an increase in neurobehavioral symptoms within 500 meters, or about 1,640 feet of a cell tower. Egger in 2004 found an increase within 400 meters. And this significant increase occurred first in 5 years, and certainly more significant increase in 10 years living near a cell tower. Wolf and Wolf did another study showing an increase within 350 meters. If you look at some of the research on cancer and DNA damage, you'll see Dr. Lai's research summaries, which are on the Bioinitiative report, show effects in 65%. Comet assays also are high. The NPTP study in 2018 showed clear evidence of cancer. And there have been many people who tried to downplay the NTP study, but it not only showed clear evidence of cancer and heart cells, and in also significant in brain cells, but also cardiomyopathy. And that was something they didn't really expect, that this radiation can pass through and cause oxidative damage, likely. It's oxidative and cardiomyopathy. Also, there are occupational reviews of military personnel that show a link between cancer and radiofrequency radiation. And an interesting study by Markova found that low power radiofrequency radiation alters DNA repair in stem cells. And this is a quote from Chris Portier, who's the former head of the CDC, and states, in my opinion, radiofrequency exposure probably causes gliomas. And given the human exposure, experimental evidence, I assert to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, the probability of that exposure causes gliomas and neuromas is high. So I just wanted to summarize this. I think it's an important study that shows that radiofrequency radiation alters stem cell DNA repair. And the important thing is that this study by Markova was done with radiofrequency radiation that was 40 times less than the FCC limit. And it's important because now people are thinking that stem cell mutations are now a cause of cancer. So brain cancer and cell phones, just have to mention it briefly. Brain tumors are rising in England and France. And if you look at the Interphone study, which they say doesn't have any effect and showed no effect, this was done in 13 countries. They did find an increase in brain tumors in the highest user groups after 10 years, but of course they downplayed that. We talked again about the NTP study of cell phones and cancer. And then of course, Hardell and Carlberg have done a service in all of their research showing a significant association between brain tumors and cell phone use on the same side. So after about 1,680 hours, a fourfold an increase, and if usage before age 20, a fourfold increase. Interesting thing has happened. There's, of course, been a decades-long lawsuits against cell phone manufacturers for causing cancer, cell phones causing cancer, and they've not been won. They've just been tied up in courts for years and years and years in the United States. But in Italy, the first court case where the judge said the cancer was due to cell phones was in Italy. But what they did, they just threw out all the industry studies and they considered them flawed because they had bias. They were biased. And of course, this is found in many other areas. So Ellie Marks of the California Brain Tumor Association, I love this quote. She says, "You can't call it a smartphone if it kills your brain cells." So what about neurologic symptoms? There are several articles that have shown this. Santini in 2020 showed that there are symptoms within 500 meters or 1,640 feet. And again, these symptoms are fatigue, headaches, difficulty concentration, depression, memory loss. And interesting, there are several studies that have shown this, but Shinyo in 2014, there was a cell tower that went up in an apartment building in Japan. And within a short time, people developed these same symptoms. And what happened in Japan is they studied this, and then eventually they did remove the cell tower. And within about 3 months, most everybody had their symptoms resolved. So that was a good study. Cognitive decline in students. So Mayo did a wonderful study recently also. It's a 2-year study, and he looked at two schools, and these were teenagers. In one school, there was a cell tower. They both had cell towers nearby, but one had a lower amount of radiation at 2 microwatts per centimeter squared. The other had 10 microwatts per centimeter squared. And he looked at their cognitive decline over time and found that over 2 years, there was a significant reduction in their delayed fine and gross motor skills, spatial working memory, and attention. And it does beg the question, why aren't we studying this more? And we're not really doing these kinds of surveys. So wildlife effects, as I said before, all manner of living organisms are affected by this. The birds, the bees, the trees, mammals, reptiles, insects, and bacteria. And a wonderful, probably the best article that's come out, and this is a really important peer-reviewed article by Blake Levitt, Henry Lai, and Albert Manville, who are really experts. And they looked at the environmental effects of wireless radio frequency radiation. It's a 3-part series. You can find it on our wildlife and environmental effects, but you can also find it easily online. And they not only talk about how it's important with regards to animals who use their own tiny, electromagnetic frequencies for navigation and foraging and so forth, but also they really delve into the effects of increasing ambient electromagnetic radiation and the proliferation of 5G satellites and the impacts on species, but also our ionosphere. This is really relevant with regards to the commercialization of space, and with all the satellites going in, with Elon Musk satellites and everybody's satellites going in now. It is really millions that are thousands and thousands of satellites that are going to be going up, and we're not really having any discussion about it or looking at this from a precautionary standpoint. Very serious manner. So one of the, if you look, yes.
Cindy, I just want to just
time check.
Yeah. Well, no, not a time check. This is also amazing. And so there are 2 things that are striking me. One is, for 20 years, we've been listening to FiOS, internet, optical. We're going to have fiber optics. Fiber optics are going to change everything. And then we met Elon Musk and his satellite raiders. I think we have to look at and address the political issue that separated the optical, fiber optic science. Corning was leading this off in New York, and we were 25, 35 years ago, all waiting for that to be the provider of faster internet access. Who was in charge of, it basically comes down to who figured out that we don't need to dig underground, that we can just throw 1 million satellites up and take every single tree, when you look at your electrical wires strung tree trunk to tree trunk, or what are those things called?
I mean, utility poles. Oh.
Utility poles. So those are going to be, the reason they're not coming down is they're going to be your 5G link, every single utility pole. Somebody led that and told the government that this was the easy peasy way to gathering large data in order to monitor and control the education, health, and wealth of a civilization.
So yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm just going to get through my talk, and then that's a very good point. It is a really important point. And this could actually be a whole talk in and of itself about the legal aspects of this and what are the next steps forward. So I appreciate that. I'm gonna just finish this very quickly, and then because I'm almost done. Is that okay? Or Cece, did you want to jump in?
No, I was just going to say I am going to cover some of the legal stuff.
Yes, good, perfect, great. So cell phone radiation causes harm to tomatoes too. So we often think of, the bees, but also what about the plants in general? And there's plenty of articles on our website. This particular article, which is new, March 2022, on the attributes of non-ionizing radiation, which 1800 megahertz frequency, that's cell phone radiation on plant health and antioxidant content, showed that the cell phone radiation decreased seed germination, photosynthesis, and root growth, and also reduced the phenolic compounds in vitamin C and antioxidant levels. So this is important from the food standpoint as well. So gardeners beware. This is our environmental wildlife effects page, and you can go and look at that. It has all the links. I wrote this article, Wireless Silent Spring, also. It discusses the wildlife effects. FCC standards are outdated. They're only based on thermal heating, not on long-term biological effects. They don't consider vulnerable populations, the fetus, babies, elderly, those who have chronic illnesses and are predisposed and vulnerable. They don't consider electrosensitive people. They don't consider environmental effects, and non-thermal biological effects and mechanisms have been identified, but they're not considered. FCC standards need to be reevaluated. People who agree with it are the American Academy of Pediatrics. The California Department of Public Health hasn't said that outright, but they do advise reducing your exposure. And they have a whole guideline on cell phone radiation they put out in 2017. That's a whole story in and of itself. Austrian Medical Association, California Medical Association has come out asking for reevaluation, or stating we should have reevaluation for the protection of the environment and public health. And Government Accountability Office is also has come out and asked for reevaluation of safety standards. So a judge agrees because in 2001, a lawsuit that was against the FCC by Environmental Health Trust and the Children's Health Defense was won by the and the judge states, we find the commission's order arbitrary and capricious in its failure to respond to and to record evidence that exposure to RF radiation at levels below the commission's current limits may cause negative health effects unrelated to cancer. So we don't know what's going to happen with this, but it's definitely an indication that this has not been addressed. Oh boy, I'm sorry. Let's see here.
Big difference.
Yes, I have just a couple more slides, a few more. I just wanted to just basically talk a little bit about 5G. And somebody's unmuted. Marketing of 5G. So we love Dolly Parton. Seen all of her movies, and she's wonderful. But she's now marketing 5G and doing it for the phone. I don't know if people saw the ads, but people were kind of shocked that she not only is marketing for 5G, which she's doing this as an actress, and she's a lovely actress. But she also has stored her phone in her bra, which if she read Dr. West's article would say this is not a good idea, that this could lead to breast cancer, putting a phone right against your body and like that. So what about the science? So marketing is different than science. And this is something that, as we have seen, and the judge agrees, has been ignored. And so many articles on 5G, and it still needs more study, but there's every indication that this could be harmful in the mixes that we have. And Dr. Joel Moskowitz has written this wonderful article in Scientific America. We have no reason to believe 5G is safe. You can go to our website and look under 5G literature, and there's a lot of literature about health impacts and so forth. The fact of the matter is that it isn't safe. We can't say that it's safe because it hasn't been studied. But one of the confusing aspects of 5G is that it's really a mix of bandwidths. And when people say it's 5G, it could mean so many different things. 5G is just 5th generation technology, but it could be different kinds of bandwidths. But some people confuse it with 5 gigahertz. So it's not 5 gigahertz wavelengths, which is twice that of the regular Wi-Fi, 2.5 gigahertz. But 5th generation could be low band, mid band, and high band. So if you look at T-Mobile, they've bought from the auction, Spectrum auction, the 600 and 700, I'm pretty sure, 600, 700 megahertz, in that range anyway. And mid-band, Sprint has the mid-band region, and the high band or millimeter wavelengths that they're now starting to use in phones. And those are the tiny ones that are the size of bees and other little creatures. So one of the problems is they're going to be putting a mix of these macro towers, which are, and these 5G towers, which are the low band, high band, and they're going to be mixing it up. And I'm not sure cities, when they have these cell tower proposals, they're not really looking at all of this. So 5G is also different in that in the phones, it's beam steering technology, and they use millimeter waves, and they have these directional phased array antennas, and they're basically scanning everything, scanning at all times to try to hook up with that cell tower. So one building biologist told me, you really don't want to be, if you've got a 5G phone, you really don't want to be within, a cone of about, I don't know, a bunch of degrees around that person who's on the phone. You want to kind of stay away from people who are using that phone, because their radiation is going to be much higher, because all those beams are just directed toward them. So some of the risks of 5G, and articles that I wrote on telecommunications expansion and public health that are indicative that there could really be problems, are damage to the eyes with cataracts and retinal damage, to the photoreceptors, the immune system disruption, metabolic disruption, and older studies that have been done also, damage to sperm, skin damage, collapse of insect populations, and that's the base of food for birds and bats, and rise in bacterial resistance and bacterial shifts on skin and ecosystems, and damage to plants and trees. So there's every indication we need to have precaution with this. We haven't studied it enough, and we're going to be in a muddle if we don't start thinking about it. These are some articles that I wrote. I think I probably put that one in. What can we do as physicians? So one of the things that we can do, all of you who are here today, want to be educated about this, and you can advise your patients to reduce exposures to wireless devices. Many of you may be very well aware of all of this. You can educate yourselves on the health effects, especially electrosensitivity. I'm going to put a little plug in here for the EMF conference 2021 to get CME credit, and I'll give you some information next slide or two. And the websites, you can go to our website. We have a lot of information. We have a scientific literature column, and you can just go down organ to organ. It has electrosensitivity, effects on kidney, heart, so forth, immune system. And the studies, it may not be the complete full list, but it will give you a good list of articles, and try to keep that updated. And EH Trust, of course, Electrosensitivity Society. You can write letters to your legislators, and I think it's really important as physicians, you have power to do that. And you can also write letters for patients who are disabled by EHS. So if you feel expert enough, it's one of the things that we really need, or we need physicians to really understand this, to look at. We have a questionnaire for EHS patients, and I think that Electrosensitivity Society is doing this also, to ask patients and to actually vouch for them and say, yes, they have a bona fide illness, electrosensitivity. And you can also work within your local medical associations to educate others and to inspire other states to do this. I know in Massachusetts, you have also passed a medical association resolution. I didn't have time to get it up. Maybe CC has it, I'm not sure, but it's really important to do this. So reducing exposure, these are on our safety tips page on our website, but on others as well, I'm sure. Prefer wireless connection, you limit the time, you increase the distance, avoid earbuds, use landline, not cordless phones, because cordless phones are the same as essentially very similar to your cell phone. You remove your smart meter, you have your devices on a table and 8 inches away or more, and you turn off your devices when they're not in use. Fiber optic network development, we're going to have a question about that in a minute. You can earn credit through the EMF conference. There's 20 units for $70. It's really a bargain. So you can go to the EMF conference 2021.com, and it's pretty easy to navigate it. The AKH is the entity that is giving the CME, and you can just go ahead and keep clicking. You'll have to kind of scroll down once you go to, and you get on the AKH site and just scroll down, and you'll find both a pre-conference with Dr. Havas, and then you can find the regular conference as well right after that. Warning, I'm at the end here. Technology is a useful servant, but a dangerous master.
And Cindy, as I'm listening to you, and it's wonderful, but people who suddenly see shifts in their health, how do they identify if they're suddenly coming under a barrage of systems around them that are increasing their risk of exposure? So if you live in an apartment building, if you live in a home, how do you know that all of a sudden your health issues, whether it's Lyme disease or COVID or long COVID or post-vaccine, isn't being amplified by changes in the connectivity of your home, office, in town? How do you find that?
I'm a plastic surgeon, so I'm going to be, telling you that as someone who's looked at the literature, and I don't treat these patients and I don't really write letters for these patients because I'm not an internal medicine physician, or a functional medicine doctor, but, I will tell you that this is the problem. This is the problem, is that you can't tell. I have patients who come to me and they want their implants removed, their breast implants removed. And honestly, I can't tell. I go, well, I'll remove them. And sometimes they're better and sometimes they're not. And I have to say, well, it's not your implants then. It could be another environmental illness. And I send them to those people that are functional medicine doctors or, who have clinics that look at environmental illness and heavy metal toxicity. There could be so many things. And as you point out, Lyme disease and a whole host of problems that people can have and they don't know. But I think I do, if people ask, I say, yeah, the best thing is just to reduce your exposure, because it's the most important thing, because you don't know. So you're looking at long-term health effects. You have cumulative effects over time. Say you're eating, you have an exposure to a toxin over time. You can get cancer and you don't know when that happened. But being preventative, understanding that it's, an oxidant.
You need to be able to say, when did my risk rise? And maybe CC, you will, dip into that, which is how do we do monitoring in our workspace and home so that we understand that there's been a significant shift in our exposure and that our health issues have turned the corner and we're like, what's going on here? Like, I can't get this under control. I can't get that under control. My sleep, my blood pressure, all of a sudden people are having cancer around me, or we have chronic diseases, right, infections, reactivation. And I guess the political or the governmental agencies that are implementing all of these do not have obligation to report that all of this 5G tower sitting all around you, or we just change the way that we're going to impact your building.
So it's a really good question. If people, you can hire a building biologist. I think that's number one, to look at
good luck.
Good luck. But also, and Cece's putting in here the Safe and Sound Pro. You can go to technologies, right? And you can buy a meter to see. It doesn't always help you in some of those things. I think the building biologists are better, but yeah, we need more building biologists, and more people are taking those courses, and more physicians are actually taking the courses. And so then you can become your own expert in that. The other thing you can do, there's a couple of things. One, Dr. Toril Jelter, she's a pediatrician that gives a wonderful talk on this. If you want to find out if it's in your own home, you turn off all the devices and you turn off the breaker switch to your bedroom or your whole house. And you do that for 2 weeks, or just even to the bedroom. And you see if you feel better without all that wireless radiation. You can also go camping for 2 weeks or go on vacation. There are so many cell towers now. It's amazing. If you go to Search Antenna, as many of you know, and you can look at how many are around you, it's so many. And so I've had patients, and I sometimes I've looked it up. I go, I wonder how many antennas are around. Like, oh my gosh, no wonder they don't feel good, but they'll never know. But it's not always everything. And it's very difficult because some patients actually, I know people say, I don't have a cell tower near me. I can't sleep. I can't do anything. They may have other issues. And so it's sort of a process of elimination in that case. And I would say those are your options, and it's not easy.
So that is a perfect segue to bringing Cece in, who is our state advocate. And I know Cece has been at our town hall and part of our community of, when we want to educate people, to bringing them back to our podcasts, et cetera, and people reach out to me and go, yeah, but my kids are forced to be on an iPad for 9 hours a day. My kids can't get their homework unless they're on an iPad. My kids have to read the book that they sent. They are drawing them in. And I am lucky enough to have, my children are in their, 30s to 40. And we had one computer in the room, and I fought the school every day. Like, I wanted their homework to come back on paper and they could send it back in. And eventually by my fourth child, I lost the battle. And so Cece, I many of you know her already, and thank you, Dr. Russell. That was a fabulous presentation. I hope we get to talk to Paul about Paul Simmett's work with the dark mushrooms that actually absorb radiation. Maybe at the end we can have a little chat about what are some of our options to undo the effect of radiation in our system. So without further ado, Cece, I turn the screen, I hope, over to you. Do I make you host now? I think I have to make you host. Well, you're in chat. Are you in? Do you have slides, Cece?
I do have slides, and if you can just pop hosting over to me, then I'll be able to get in there.
How am I going to do this?
Maybe on.
Let me see. Let me go to panelists. Okay. And Cece, let me see if I can make you the host. Or no, Chris.
Do you have to take Cindy off as the co-host at this point?
Maybe. So Chris has to come off as a host.
There we go. I think you did it.
Okay. There you go.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Can everybody see my screens? Cindy, can you give me a nod if you can see this? I can see your head. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Again, Cece Doucette, that MTPW after my name just means that I had the privilege of earning my master's in technical and professional writing from Northeastern University. And I had no idea this is what I would be doing with my life at this point. But we kept hearing about that 21st century classroom and how our kids were going to need all this great new technology to succeed in life. So I jumped in when I was helping to lead our local education foundation, and we brought in all the iPads and the Chromebooks and the wireless infrastructure. And then one night, a girlfriend of mine at my book group, who's an engineer, tipped us off that there could be biological effects. And so being a tech writer, I dove in to find the science, and I found everything that Cindy just showed us in her wonderful presentation. Our schools back in 2014 became the first in the United States to even have this little sign hanging in our classrooms that says to turn off. Pat, I'm just going to mute you because I think we're picking up background noises on you. So we became the first in the nation to even put up this precautionary sign, turn everything off when you're not using it, right? The industry would have us have all Wi-Fi all the time, and that simply is not a healthy state to be in. I've also worked with legislators here in Massachusetts and in New Hampshire, and I'll share some wonderful details on that with you. I've helped to co-found a nonprofit out of Europe called Wireless Education, where we've distilled this vast amount of information down to simple online courses that can be completed by a whole school district or a whole corporation in about a half an hour online. We're in the process of moving that over to a new platform, so we'll be offline for a little bit, but we have the off-the-shelf training ready to go to help all of our communities. I was the only one I could talk to about this for the first couple of years because we didn't have the resources 9 years ago when I fell down the rabbit hole that we now have for today to train our doctors, to train our engineers and others on how to use technology safely. So in recent years, we have formed Massachusetts for Safe Technology, and there are groups all over the country who also are doing what we're doing here in Massachusetts. So you're not alone. And I like to share this link. Somebody found my work and asked if I would co-chair the technology panel for the Health in Buildings Roundtable Conference down at the National Institutes of Health. And I brought with me Dr. Martin Paul, who's one of the world's leading scientists on this, Frank Clegg, who's the retired president of Microsoft Canada, who's speaking about the need to have responsible technology, and others. And our talks are less than 10 minutes each. So this is a really nice way to credibly share this with somebody quickly. And then as Cindy mentioned, we were honored to speak at these international EMF or electromagnetic field medical conferences. And as I put in the chat, that training is available online at your own pace to earn continuing medical education credits. And Elizabeth Kelly, who's the executive director of this conference, went through the additional process to get nurses accredited for this as well. So not only the doctors, but the nurses, our first responders need medical training as well. So please share this with your communities. So one of the things that helped our schools become the first in the nation was when they read the legal fine print that comes with all of our devices. So if anybody with us today has an iPhone, I welcome you to grab that and go into settings. And once you're in settings, scroll down just a little bit to general. On a really old phone, you'd have to hit about, but I think most people have upgraded. So from general, go all the way down and hit legal and regulatory. Once you hit legal and regulatory, you'll see a little list at the top, and 4 or 5 down, you'll see RF exposure. That's radio frequency radiation that they politely call energy in this legal disclaimer. And in that legal fine print, it's telling you that this device was tested at a distance away from your body. So don't put this device anywhere on your body. As Dr. Russell said, you know, Dolly Parton and Miley Cyrus are promoting tucking it right into your bra. And as Cindy notices, she's seeing an increase in breast cancers among her patients. We're seeing increases in breast cancers in both men and women for sticking them in their shirt pockets, their suit pockets. We're seeing doubling and quadrupling of colon and rectal cancers, and people are putting those in their waistbands and in their back pockets. So it also says in that legal fine print to use a hands-free option, and they suggest that you use speakerphone or a headset. You'd be wise to look for a hollow tube or an air tube headset that has no metal going up into your brain, because anything that has metal carries that signal just like an antenna, and it grabs the ambient radiation too, and you don't want any metal near your head where radiation is concerned. So when my schools read this legal fine print, that's where they had a big uh-oh moment, because they have given the students, and the staff all of this wireless equipment with no safety precautionary training. So it was hard for me to get my head around this issue because it's invisible. At least with tobacco or natural gas, they added a fragrance to natural gas, so we know when we're being exposed. We can smell a cigarette, but we have no way of knowing when we're being exposed to this radio frequency radiation. And that's when I discovered there are meters that we can use. And this is the Safe and Sound Pro 2 that was recommended at the medical conference. I met a chiropractor who went to the conference here in Massachusetts, and she bought one. She loans it out in her medical practice for $10, and she gives her clients two hours. They'll come in for their appointment. She'll tell them they need to go take a look at what they're being exposed to at home. She'll give them a 2-hour limit, so they take it home right then, see all around their living space where their exposures are, and then they have to bring it right back. That helps to go over that hurdle, like, oh, do I really want to know this? Do I think I really want to try it? She said, you got 2 hours, go, right? So I want to give you a demonstration. Here in my home, knowing what we know, we keep our radio frequency as low as we can. You'll see that it's in the green. And right now I'm getting a maximum reading of 4.8 microwatts per square meter. That's the unit of measurement. In the scientific literature, there is no safe level of man-made radio frequency radiation. But the scientific literature indicates if we can get it under 10, we're doing pretty well. In our sleeping spaces, we want that to be 0.1 or less. So here in my house, I'm in green, but I want to give you a demonstration of what this looks like when I take my cell phone out of there. So this has gone way off the charts into the extreme level as it goes to the cell tower or trying to find a router going, here I am, where are you? Here I am, where are you? I'm going to go back into airplane mode and then I will share the reading with you. So it took a couple seconds to dissipate. I'm back down in the green, but the maximum exposure, remember I was at 4. That one cell phone kicked us up to 218,000 microwatts per square meter. So that's what we're doing to ourselves. That's what we're doing to our children. And educating others is perhaps the best path forward on this. So when we came back from the first medical conference in 2019 in California, I partnered with a medical doctor who I met out there, and she and I went after a state grant and got a meter placed in her local library. And I had already piloted that in my hometown of Ashland. So that's something people can do, is donate one of these meters to the community. They can put a barcode on it. It comes in a nice hard shell case. And then anybody in the community can have access to that tool to measure. Out in Pittsfield, where Cindy mentioned, this cell tower got turned on top of this community and children were vomiting in their beds. People have had to abandon their homes. They also got one of these meters in their library, so everybody can go and measure what are these exposures. And my local cable station was kind enough to come into my home. There's a 23-minute public service announcement where I do a walkthrough of my home and show where all these exposures are, and then suggest simple steps you can take to remediate. So I mentioned indoors, you want to be under 10. In the scientific literature, they say, even if we could get to 1,000 outdoors, presuming you get to go home and have a safe area in which you can go to sleep and your circadian rhythm would help to remove those toxins in the wee hours of darkness. If we could get to 1,000 outdoors, that might be considered in the green zone. But let me show you what some of our readings have been here. Natick, Massachusetts, 327, and these are right in the downtown areas. Framingham, 68 or 61,000. In my little tiny town of Ashland, where we have some pretty serious cell towers and water towers that are populated with these antennas, we're in the red zone too with 28,000. Cambridge, Massachusetts. Then you go into the North End, which is where we have these amazing Italian restaurants, and it's a huge touristy area right in Boston, right near Faneuil Hall. And you look on this Hanover Street, which is the main strip in the North End. Look at these pretty wrought iron lamps. Well, these are cell towers. These are beautifully designed small cells right at the curb where thousands of tourists are going every day. And then when you look down the side street, they put up the ugly monopole, which is just like a big gray skinny pole with the antenna canister on top. So they'll seduce you into getting a pretty one. And then if you don't matter enough, they're going to put one of these ugly ones. But the bottom line is that our cities especially are getting just immersed in this electro smog. So we're inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King, who identified that when we have important changes in our social norms, it comes through 3 channels. One, the public becomes informed and takes action, and that's what we're here to help you with today. The courts begin to rule, and then public policy catches up to, in this case, the science. And we've got some terrific inroads happening right now. So somebody in the chat had said, how do we do this? What do we do? It's not rocket science. This little diagram can walk you through it. In your home, you have a router. Flip it around and look at the back, and you will see that you have Ethernet ports in there. All you need to do is get a big, long Ethernet cable. You want to look for one that says shielded, because there are other forms of man-made electromagnetic fields, the electric and the magnetic, that if you're not using shielded cables and wiring, those invisible pulsations can come through your walls about 6 to 8 feet into your living space. And for many people, it's not going to bother them. But for people who are electromagnetically sensitive, that can be a trigger for their symptoms as well. So if you're going to do this, just pay a couple extra bucks and get a shielded Ethernet cable. And then you can get this little tiny device. I mean, that's the one that I have. It's really little. In a classroom, you could get a bigger one that has 30 ports in it, but this is called an Ethernet switch. And this is something you can think of as just like an extension cord for your electronics. And then for however many devices you have, just get a little short Ethernet cable. So you plug the big one into here, and then you plug your little cables into here. And then who knew? You can actually hardwire many of our cell phones, right? This is a little adapter that you'd pay maybe 20, 30 bucks for. You plug it into your cell phone. You plug this into the Ethernet cable that goes into here, that's going into your router, where the fiber optics or the high-speed cable is coming into your home at the other end of this. So it's not rocket science. And you can do the same thing for your tablets, for your iPads, for your Chromebooks. Again, a simple little adapter or a dongle. Once you have done that, the final step is to turn off the antennas. So all you have to do is go into your settings, look for the cellular antenna, the Bluetooth antenna, the Wi-Fi, the locator, the hotspot, and any others that have come in with 5G. So you just go off, 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 and then you have a perfectly safe device. At home, I still use my landline. It's just a regular phone. It's got speaker on it. This one I got from Staples. It's the CL2909 from AT&T. I looked up what people who are electrically sensitive use. They like this one because it doesn't also have an electrical cord. It just plugs into the phone jack. So that lowers their man-made electromagnetic fields. So you can forward your cell phone calls to a landline, right? And as you saw, I keep my cell phone in airplane mode as a rule, and I only take it out when I absolutely have to have it. So people in my life just know, catch me on my landline or shoot me an email, because I'm using a hardwired computer, a hardwired printer, a hardwired mouse. All of that I went and pulled out of a box in my basement once I figured out what all this wireless encouragement from the industry was really doing to us. And then you always want to take that third step and measure, because the industry is putting these antennas in everything, every electronic for the Internet of Things. So having access to a meter is really the only way to know if you got it. I'll give you an example. When my daughter was in college, she used to teach swim lessons in our pools when she was home in the summer. And she came home one day and said, "Mom, I need to print out my swim schedule. Can I just turn on the Wi-Fi real quick?" And I said, "Sure, just turn it off as soon as you're done." because she needed to print it out. So the next workday, I'm sitting here in my office, and I've never felt good under fluorescent lights. They wipe me out. And I was feeling like that. And I'm like, well, what is it? And I turned on my meter. And although the little glowing indicator on my printer for Wi-Fi was not glowing, my meter was going off the charts next to that printer. And I'm like, well, what the heck? So I looked it up online. I just went and found my manual. And it turns out there were 3 antennas in that one printer. And all I had to do was to go into settings and go off, apply. Same thing with my router. I called up Verizon and said, we're choosing hard wiring. How do I make that triple play box in my basement stop radiating? And they said, oh, simple, just sit down at your computer. They walked me through how to get into my online account. And from my computer, I learned that I can control those wireless settings. There was a 2.4 gigahertz antenna. There was a 5 gigahertz antenna. And some companies like Comcast, Xfinity are also putting public hotspots in those routers. So you just need to know to go look for them all and then measure, because there's sneaky little buggers in there. So that's how we take care of what we have under our control. So we've been working on policy solutions, and I've been speaking to Massachusetts legislators since 2014. There was a woman who I believe is actually with us here tonight, one of my heroes, Deb Hodgson. And Deb was one of the unfortunate ones who got deathly ill from this. And she was literally headed toward her deathbed, and her doctors couldn't figure it out. The specialist that she's now paying thousands of dollars out of pocket couldn't figure it out. And then when she began the investigation on her symptoms, that's when she discovered electromagnetic illnesses. And so Deb had been introducing this topic to her state senator and her state rep. And when her representative came and knocked on her door to ask to be reelected, she invited him in and taught him what she had been through. And Representative Patrick Abrami in New Hampshire is an engineer. And he's only been taught that you have to have heat from a device to have harm, because that heat, that thermal effect, as Cindy mentioned, is what our federal limits are set to. So right now, our FCC limits allow this much radiation. And as Cindy explained, the harm biologically is happening at the non-thermal level, hundreds of thousands of times below what the FCC still allows. So this didn't make any sense to Representative Abrami, because he and our physicists and our technologists have only been trained up that you have to have heat. So bless him, he went and did the deep dive into the science. He drafted a bill. Deb introduced me to him. I gave him some suggestions, and then bless him, he brought Deb down in his car from New Hampshire to Massachusetts. We sat at my kitchen table for the afternoon and helped him to connect the dots. So he writes this incredible bill looking for answers to these questions. Why has the insurance industry, Lloyd's of London, Swiss Re, AM Best, they've long since recognized this as a world-leading risk, and they have put exclusions in their policies. So who's left holding the bag on damages? Our towns, our schools. Why does that legal fine print tell us to keep it off the body? Why is the FCC ignoring thousands of peer-reviewed studies? Why are they not looking at the non-thermal, non-ionizing biological effects? And why does the US, our FCC, allow 100 times more radiation than other countries are doing? And why is nobody looking at the cumulative effect of all this radiation storing in our tissues? So we helped him to bring experts in to testify in New Hampshire. And in less than a year, in 7 months, this got through their House Committee on Science, Technology, and Energy. It then went over to their Senate Committee on Health and Human Services. And within 7 months, they both advanced this. And then it went to Governor Sununu, and he signed it into a law that we have to form a commission to investigate. I don't know what we're doing in Massachusetts, because we have been doing this same work since 2014. It's important at this point in the conversation to mention that New Hampshire legislators are not paid. They receive a $100 stipend, and they have not taken a raise since like 18 89. So there may be a lot of political influence that is stronger in Massachusetts because this is their full-time job. So they have to perhaps walk a finer line. But in New Hampshire, they're like, whoa, we got a problem. Let's see what we can do about it. So I'm so grateful. So there, I'll make my slides available to Pat and Leslie. They can get these out to you later. Anything with a blue line here, you'll be able to drill down into the facts. So their groundbreaking report documented the corruption with our FCC, our FDA, and the wireless industry. And then they make 15 recommendations in no particular order. They're all really important. And this session, the first bite of the elephant that they took is to come up with a bill that is called House Bill 1644. It's bipartisan. It is asking for these setbacks that Cindy showed in the scientific literature, 500 meters or 1,640 feet, because that's where the death rate begins to slope down. It doesn't actually catch up to the general population death rate until almost double that. So, but at least let's stem the flow. So we should not be allowing our towns to put these small cell antennas right at the curb outside of our homes. Dr. Toril Jelter, the pediatrician that Cindy spoke of, was with us last night for a forum we did out in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And she said, you know, one of the families that she's worked with, there were 2 little girls who started getting really sick, and everything they did, these girls were still getting sicker and sicker. And they're like, well, what has changed? And it was when that small cell antenna showed up outside their bedroom window. So this is very real, it's very dangerous, and it's very present in our communities today, unless we start speaking up about it. In this bill, they've also put that we need to have a registry of harm because nobody's tracking this data, and it should be paid for by industry. And Dr. Kent Chamberlain from the University of New Hampshire is now the chairman and professor emeritus at their Department of Computer and Electrical Engineering. And when he was appointed to this commission, he thought it was a slam dunk. Of course, wireless is fine because he spent 30 years of his career working on man-made electromagnetic fields. And now that he understands the facts, he is now trying to educate the world on how to use technology safely. And it is not wireless. So he did a 20-minute presentation, and you can also see his slides that summarize why that setback and why those numbers are so critically important. And we have gone up and testified in New Hampshire. You can watch the hearings. They do a very transparent process in New Hampshire. And at the end of the day, when they did their first pass on this, they unanimously voted not to kill the bill because we see industry influence forcing bills to go by the wayside in other areas. But they unanimously said, we need to do something. 4 of them wanted to say, pass this bill right now. But the other 17 said, whoa, we're just getting our arms around this. We need a little more time. So they have formed an interim study committee that will begin meeting this spring. And by the end of this year, they have to decide what they want to do with that. We have bills in Massachusetts. We had 11 directly sponsored, plus another 9 that a citizen introduced. This one is still in play today that would do what New Hampshire did. So this is where our medical teams and our citizens can be contacting Consumer Protection advanced the bill, and it is now with Senate Ways and Means. And if you join my email list out at Massachusetts for Safe Technology, you'll get my notices when I can trigger it so that we can then give input at the right point in the legislative process. Smart meters we haven't talked about very much yet, but that's another item that's largely out of our control. They're putting these utility meters on our homes to capture our usage of gas, water, electric, and solar, and propane, without telling us that it has a microwave transmitter in it that's pulsing radiation. When I measured my home, I was getting 17,000 pulses in a 24-hour period. If you have somebody on the other side of the wall from where these are mounted, or heaven forbid, you're in a multi-unit dwelling where there's a whole bank of them, that means a lot of radiation. And at the medical conference, we had some of our doctors telling us that when these smart meters go in, when these small cells go in, and when large cells start encroaching into our living communities, we start seeing an uptick in people who bring in symptoms of microwave sickness. So we're doing everything that we can. We need your support to help get these bills done. You can watch testimonies that we've given in Massachusetts. And here's the Medical Society initiative that we did through pure inspiration from what Cindy did back in 2014. She helped California become the first to acknowledge that there's something here and we need to be looking at it. Dr. Lisa Naj is an environmental medicine specialist and an emergency specialist out in Martha's Vineyard. She became very ill from environmental exposures. And so she was right there on her deathbed too, until she discovered the work of Dr. Bill Ray, may he rest in peace. And he healed her, or taught her how to heal herself. And then she trained with him, and now she's able to help others. So Dr. Naj was the co-chair of that first medical conference we held in 2019. And for the last 2 years, using Cindy's great example from 2014, we updated the resolution and brought in Dr. David Carpenter, who has also been a World Health Organization partner, and helped our medical society learn about this. And like everybody else, you have to start learning somewhere. There was a lot of bluster. People don't want to know about it. They think it's, tinfoil hat, conspiracy theory, until you bring in the experts and the peer-reviewed, irrefutable scientific literature. So it took us 2 years, but they did take this resolution and they did convert it. They adopted a policy statement this past December, and they're saying that the appropriate agencies, not the FCC, need to be working on this. And then we need to get public policy brought up to speed with this. So that's our medical society. Back in 2016, I wrote an EMF fact sheet with the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and Dr. Joel Moskowitz at UC Berkeley in their public health school had also written one with the California Department of Public Health that for years was suppressed by industry. And he got a couple of lawyers at Berkeley to pro bono for him. And they went ahead and got sued because they never issued that. And back in December of 2017, California was forced to issue that cell phone fact sheet. Dr. Moskowitz knew what we've been trying to do here in Massachusetts. And by the way, this should have been front page news all across the world, but our media is commandeered by the wireless industry. If anybody has watched the new I Love Lucy movie, Being the Ricardos, that's a beautiful example of how we only get in mainstream media what the financiers want us to get in mainstream media. So in the Being the Ricardos, they show that the big tobacco sponsors and others drove the content of what gets in the mainstream media. And that's what we're still up against today. So that's why we didn't hear about this other than the local San Francisco papers, right? So Dr. Moskowitz, bless him, went over to the Boston Globe editor and said to Brian McCrory, you may be interested to know that your Department of Public Health is sitting on this fact sheet that the public has a right to know. So, and I've been trying to get the Globe's attention for years, but Dr. Moskowitz has to write letters after his name. So they assigned their tech reporter to this, and they did this article suggesting that our cell phones are not safe. And the Department of Public Health said they would have these fact sheets out within 6 months. Well, within 3 weeks of getting flack from this article, the guy I'd been coordinating with at our Department of Education said, hey, did you see that the Department of Public Health put up an EMF fact sheet? And I went, oh my gosh, no. So I boogied over that website, and it is not the good scientific based information that we had worked so hard on with our Department of Public Health. Instead, they put up this page, and in bold letters, they're saying, basically, there's nothing to look at here. And if you have any concerns, you can go look at these websites at the federal level, which we know are captured federal agencies, and they don't tell us the truth either. So I went and sat with the interim chair at our Department of Education. And I said, look, and I presented to them, I said, look, are you guys getting plans together to protect the kids and the teachers in school? He said, well, we're waiting for higher authorities. And I said, well, we've already got the bills. I've already written fact sheets. Who does the DPH report to? And he said, the Executive Office of Health and Human Services. So we had what I thought was an excellent meeting with Health and Human Services. One of the gentlemen there said, you know, I was coming into our federal building or our office building, and Verizon was there putting up a light pole, and it struck him as funny because Verizon is not a utility company. Why are they putting up a light pole? Well, it wasn't a light pole. It was a small cell antenna, and they've got them on each corner of their office building. So I thought we had a great meeting. That was in the summer of 2019, and still they have done nothing but give every student a wireless tablet to access their education with no safety instructions. So this goes on everywhere. There was a really good start, an emergency law in Oregon. A good report was written. Somebody, probably working with captured industry, stripped all the good science out of it. And it took a journalistic investigation to out the corruption at the Oregon Health Authority.
So
So
I think,
I won't go.
Cece, I just have to say that all of us are dealing with the incentives which are not aligned with good.
Mhm.
And to the frustration, the overwhelming impact on all of our professions, whether we are physicians, nurses, doctors, advocates, engineers. You know, when I looked at that, I live in the North End, I'm looking around. No one at Mass General can figure out why I have heart attacks all the time. I live with a gun pointed at my head. Don't know where the bullet is. They
Yeah.
can't figure out. And
Pat,
so-
I have been brought in to give an initial short presentation to the North End Residents Association. Perhaps you and I can go back
Sure.
and get that ball rolling again. And this is what it takes, guys. It takes you and I at the grassroots level, bringing forth our expertise and the science, because without that, it's going to take years for public policy to meaningfully catch up to the science. And you and
Well,
I
you have
know.
the largest health organization in the North End,
Mhm.
Mass General Hospital.
Yeah.
They're
And-
the largest.
Yeah.
They provide, implement, and transmit, and are forcing every moment of our health industry to be linked in, downloaded, uploaded, large data. In fact, I was told I could no longer be a contracting physician because I didn't have strong enough electronic medical records to upload enough data. So they're going to take away my contracts to even take care of patients. I mean, I understand this initiative, and I think there were two facets here. One is protect yourself. And,
Yes.
you know, and let me tell you, it's a life or death issue for me to figure out every day how I get to live another day. And so I can do the best I can, but I live in an apartment building in the North End at the end of Hanover Street. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm probably at 6,000, you know, radiations coming through. I can't shut down the whole building.
Mhm.
You know, do I put myself in a Faraday cage? Do I eat black mushrooms? Do I, you know, I sleep on a pulsed electromagnetic field, and the 3 nights I'm here that I'm not, I'm thinking, you know, maybe I should be doing it. I think we really have to think about solutions for patients and for people, and to advise people, because the financial interest of moving this forward, because the entire system is going to go to cryptocurrency or digital currency and blockchain currency at the global level. The World Health Organization is moving to a single banking system, and they need 5G everywhere to bring all your data in and follow you wherever you are.
Mhm. Well, there is good news. There is a huge push right now for fiber to and through the premises. What that means is right now, fiber optics is great technology. It's just light traveling through glass. What the industry will do, because it's cheaper, is they'll put the fiber optics down the middle of your road, And then instead of bringing it directly to your home where you can just hook up with Ethernet cables indoors, they are throwing up these 5G small cell antennas that will pulse the radiation signals to you. So there is a big push right now to bring fiber to the premises. And my daughter's godparents are on a 3-year work commitment over in Switzerland. And he just emailed me an article that their town of Morges is one of 4 in Switzerland that are piloting fiber to the home. So we're so embroiled here in the US because this is where a lot of the telecom manufacturers are. But other countries are already getting ahead of us. And so we can leverage that and say, look, this is a bad solution for our communities. And there's excellent resources. This book here is called Reinventing Wires, the Future of Landlines and Networks. It's free and online. People can print it out and take it to their towns and say, look, we've been sold all Wi-Fi all the time, but there's a whole nother side of this story that we need to investigate before we make decisions on how to access the internet. And last night at the forum that we did out in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, we were honored to have Frank Clegg with us. And Frank is the retired president of Microsoft Canada. And in 30 years or 40 years of being in the industry, he knew enough never to have Wi-Fi in his home. But when he retired, he was like, well, what is this? And what do we really know about it? And he sought out a dozen of the world's leading scientists and came back and said, here in North America, we are not safe. And so Frank is now saying that the industry talked us into thinking that wireless equals the internet, but it doesn't. The internet equals the best that we can get, and that is fiber optics to and through the premises. So one of the most important lessons I've learned is do not go it alone. When I brought this up to my schools, I thought they would evacuate the building just as if we had a chemical leak in the science lab. But I got back crickets because the industry got in at the state level and they pushed their 21st century classroom campaign. And now all of our school committees, our school administrators are being evaluated at the state level by how thoroughly they are immersing technology into the curriculum. Well, we should know that the New York Times did a series of articles called, one of them was about Silicon execs having their nannies sign contracts that there will be no technology around their children, not wireless, not
and they're
hardware.
also sending their children to Wi-Fi free schools.
Yeah,
And
Waldorf, Montessori. Right.
Island sanctuaries where they're not going to be impacted.
Exactly. So we have all the facts. Yeah.
Right. We know we have all the facts, but
Yeah.
the common person walking down the common street, including, I hate to say common, is physicians. I say to them, do you understand what 5G means? And they go, what do you mean?
No.
I mean, these are our doctors who look at me as if I have 6 horns coming out of my head. I go, you actually have no idea what 5G means. Do you know what Ethernet means? Do you know what fiber optics mean? And they go, no.
Yeah. So one of the things that has bubbled up out of Pittsfield is if the industry comes in and says, oh, these are alarmists, they just don't want a cell tower in their backyard. Meanwhile, they've had to abandon their homes. They've had 3 cancer cases. One person whose cancer came back has now died. This has been battling for 2 years in their neighborhood. But one of the things that we've discovered is the industry comes in and tells our towns, oh, this isn't happening anywhere else. This is just your town. These people are crazy, right? So I wanted to point out that this is happening all over. And Americans for Responsible Technology is having people who are forming groups sign up with them. So when they go up to Capitol Hill, they can say, look, we're here representing all these people in your district. There are more than 150 national groups all across our country grappling with this and making inroads and strengthening their town bylaws. Because if you don't codify it in your town bylaws and your ordinances on wireless zoning, they can just come in and put it up at the curb because there's a shot clock. 60 days, you have to approve that application if it's going on an existing pole, 90 days if it's going up on a new pole. And that's not enough time to change your bylaws. So
we go to our town and say, ask them what their plans are for implementing those towers.
Yeah, ask
How many
them
towers?
what their wireless communication facility bylaws are, and is there a setback so that we don't put them in residential areas, we don't put them on our medical facilities or our playing fields or our senior centers. And it can be done. Like Shelburne, Massachusetts already has that 1,500-foot setback from residencies and 3,000 feet from schools. 20 years ago, Wayland, Massachusetts got a 900-foot setback because somebody in their community pro bonoed and worked up and did their bylaws for them because they knew the harm. So this is happening all over, but we're not getting the information, and that's what's.
And this is for the 5G towers?
Both. Burlington, Massachusetts came up with a new policy that said to the wireless industry, if we grant this application, you have to come back every year and recertify that it's still viable in our community according to whatever the law of the land is from the FCC. And we as a town don't have the money to hire an independent expert to do that recertification. So we're going to charge you, Verizon, for every one of those antennas you want to put in. We're going to make you pay us so we can have an independent recertification done. Well, when Verizon heard that policy got ratified, they withdrew their 7 small cell applications because they know full well they want to put millions of these across the country. And they certainly don't want to give a percentage of their income to doing these annual research. So there are many things that people can do. And out at Americans for Responsible Technology, they have taken the best of the best and come up with a sample ordinance. You can just grab that and take it to your town and say, hey, let's get our town lawyer involved. If they're not a telecom expert, let's hire somebody who is. Andrew Campanelli is a good one. It's under, I think it's like just under $9,000. He'll look at your bylaws. He'll tell you what the gap is, and then you can revise your bylaws. So solutions abound. And as Cindy mentioned, there's that federal lawsuit that was just won that basically the FCC had no homework saying their public radiation exposure limits are safe. So it got sent back to the FCC to do over. But here in Massachusetts, through the activity happening in Pittsfield, we learned that the Massachusetts Board of Health Association has a set of legal guidelines. And in the last 4 pages of this document, there are 4 pages about cell towers to advise our local town boards of health that you don't want to be allowing these cell towers anywhere near your residence.
So I don't mean to be Debbie Downer, but it seems that we are fighting this block by block.
Until public policy catches up, which is what we're hoping New Hampshire will do.
Well, we have a federal government for a reason. Mm-hmm. And it seems that if these indications of harm and that the liability, it's no different than being able to sell cigarettes across the country, mm-hmm. that if you can sell cell towers across the country, mm-hmm. the evidence of harm, if it's a clear and present danger without adequate research, this has to come from a federal level.
Well, one would think
North
that.
End to Boston to Pittsfield to Ashland to New. I know.
But it takes that to bubble up to the federal level. So you may know Linda Birnbaum, Dr. Linda Birnbaum. She just retired as the head of the NIEHS. She did a program recently and said that there are some very good people at the federal level, but there are a lot of captured agencies. And because of that political influence that the industry has at the federal level, she believes it's going to take the pushing up from the state and local level. So there is no cavalry coming. We have to do the hard work. But these are the great.
Dr. Hopkins, I'm going to just ask you to, because we've run over, and I know we still have a lot of people listening, and this is it's just a fascinating topic, and it's a disturbing topic, and it's something that I think we can all think about how we each in our own roles, as whether we're healthcare providers or just citizens in our own town, now take this information and really, as Cece said, there's no cavalry coming. We are the cavalry. And we have to all think about how we can play our roles in making a change, because it's not going to come from the top down. So maybe you can just help us wrap up.
Yeah, and I am just about at the end of this. I do want to mention, though, that this month, Pittsfield's Board of Health did something that nobody has ever done before. The industry has convinced our towns, because of the Telecom Act that they wrote back in 1996, that if there's any bluster about health or environment, you're just out of luck, because they put a clause in the law that says you can't sue us. So that's all they've told our towns. What Pittsfield did is they went and got legal consultation and have determined that that only applies to siting a cell tower. If there is something in our community that is making people sick, it is our responsibility as a Board of Health to fix it. So that's what Pittsfield did. They have issued an emergency order and have told Verizon, you have 7 days to come to the table and let's work this out. That 7 days has now expired. And so now the Board of Health is going into executive session with their city councilors to ask for $84,000 to fight Verizon and make them turn off that cell tower. So we're hoping that this will succeed, because this is setting a precedent for every Board of Health in every town across the United States and perhaps beyond. So we are making really important inroads. But again, do you want to be a sitting duck waiting for somebody else to fix this while we don't even know what's in our own bylaws in our own town? Do we have a restriction for residential areas? Do we have a setback from our schools? Okay,
Well,
so
I think
lots
the
of good
problem
things.
is our representatives, our senators and our Congress are woefully uneducated about 90% of that which they pass.
I know. And that's why we've been working our tail off to get the education out there. So that's why Cindy and I are so grateful to be with everybody here tonight, because we just thrive on these opportunities to get the credible information there. And then good public servants will step up. But one of the lessons I've learned that it is not, well, it's a very rare public servant who's also a public leader. Most of them are beholden to the systems through which they have to affect change, rather than stepping up and making the system bend to fix the problem. So it's hard. It's really hard work, but it's so gratifying when somebody reaches out to me and says, you know what? I turned everything off last night and I slept for the first time in ages. Or we got rid of or we just put the iPad in airplane mode because my kids only use it to listen to music while they're getting ready for bed. And we hardwired the laptop on their desk and we turned off the antennas, and my 2-year-old slept through the night for the first time in his life. And the older boy had severe behavioral issues, and he's in a classroom right now that got put up for a population bubble. And we're waiting for the other shoe to drop because there's no Wi-Fi in his classroom and our house is clean now. And he is this happy, healthy little boy who's now able to play with his peers. So this can be life-changing overnight. If you can create the opportunities for us to get out there, I can be brought in to do community conversations with your patients, with your colleagues, with your legislators. Just wind me up and let me go, because we've got the facts.
So I want to thank both of you. This was tremendous. And I'm thinking of ways that we can facilitate the energy, effort, and the data. And I think of, in the landscape of the shortest path to impact. And I'm thinking of one, our business leaders who have been impacted with wealth. So once they're impacted and they understand their health and they have the wealth to try to improve their health, they will make headways. The second one is parents want to protect their children. And I think parents are probably the greatest cavalry that we can engage in, because every parent is struggling with behavior, depression. The nurses that are at the schools tell me 10 years ago, they were like the Maytag washermen sitting there with nothing to do. Now they're busy all day giving out medications for autism, hyperactivity, depression, anxiety, eating disorders. And so I think that maybe the cavalry is really built on the backs of parents, perhaps in communities that have the money to push their representatives, their Senate and Congress, and say, look, we're going to make sure you do not get elected.
Yeah. There's a wonderful woman. There's a wonderful woman
Serious.
named Zen Honeycutt who runs Moms Across America, and she's brought some of us in to speak to her group. They're fighting the GMOs and other environmental exposures.
Vaccine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of issues for parents.
Yeah, and people are really tired right now.
Yeah.
Parents especially are just at their wits' end because this is nothing like we had to do when we were parenting our kids who are grown adults now. So you're right. But the parents are also addicted to their devices and they run their lives through them. So again, at every turn, we want to underscore the message is not no technology, it's safe technology. And we know how to get there. So Pat, anybody else on the call, if you want to set up a community conversation with parents, I've been brought in to do library programs. I've been brought into people's living rooms where they invite their 20 closest friends and the parents get educated that way. So anything that you can create as an opportunity for education, I would be more than honored to be brought in to help with that.
Well,
Thank you so much, Cece. And, thank you, Dr. Russell, for really taking us through and giving us the confidence as medical providers that the science is on our side.
Mhm.
And for Cece bringing home the point that there are ways we can address this, but we all have to work in our communities, work in educating our patients. And, I think there's a lot to think about from this presentation and inspire us to make changes.
I want to say thank you very much because it's really wonderful to have an opportunity to speak to physicians about this and other nurses and health, people in the health professions, because this is actually it's one of these issues, as Cece pointed out, until you have the problem, you're not going to really be understanding this, and to get more doctors involved with it who are writing these articles, I think, and making this more mainstream. So I would say I'm happy to participate in other educational events as I'm able. So, and I thank you very much. It was a great talk, and Cece, you did a great job as well. Thank you, Leslie.
Right
Thank
back at you, Cindy. It's such an honor anytime we get to cross paths.
Exactly.
So
well, I hope our next meeting will be sooner, and maybe we set up now that I have my children back and my grandchildren, and I try to education. I have 5 grandchildren, and trying to educate the parents. It would be great if I could get my kids interested in saying, at this public school system, let's set this up for looking at your town. Where is it? Because I'm going to tell you, nobody knows where it is.
Mhm.
And in the first,
well, I'll tell you what, with the kids, I had a woman bring me into her office, and then we went to her home, and her 15-year-old son was there, and we just made a scavenger hunt out of it. I handed him the meter and I said, okay, you go see if you can find where all these
That's
exposures
great.
are. And he was blown away as this thing blew into red time and again. And he had his own little man cave up in the attic, and everything was wireless up there. And within 5 minutes, he had pulled the box out of the closet and completely hardwired every single thing and gone into each setting and turned off the wireless antennas. So let the kids help you do the solutions, let them own it. But having a meter in hand is really critical, because otherwise it's easy to just put it out of your mouth.
This isn't a promotion. What meter do you like? Which one? I have one, but I think I should get a couple more. What's the meter that?
Well, this is the one that was recommended at the EMF Medical Conference. It's called the Safe and Sound Pro 2, and it's by Safe Living Technologies. It retails, I think, for $385. However, if anybody would like to participate in a scientific study, Dr. Magda Havas up in Canada, she's a professor emeritus of Trent University who taught EMFs for 25 years. She's acknowledging that none of our governments are doing a very good job of measuring how much radiation is out there. Mm-hmm. So if you want to buy a meter and want to follow her protocol to take readings where you live or where you work or where you travel, you can get them into her database, because she's building a world map of what the radiation levels are. And you'll get a discount. You can contact her through globalemf.net. And I think I paid $308 with a discount.
You want to leave us with a few parting words of wisdom, Dr. Hopkins? And thank you all to the Greater Boston Functional Medicine Group. The majority of people are still here listening. We appreciate your attention and we understand what an important topic this is. And we welcome your suggestions on how we, as the Greater Boston Functional Medicine Group, can take this information that we've received tonight and start working together as a group to make some inroads as medical professionals. So please keep in touch with us and stay tuned. Our website is under redesign and we're going to have a much better website in hopefully a month or two. And we also are hoping that our next meeting will be in person back at Johnson Compounding. So I'll let you close things, Dr. Hopkins.
So I want to thank everyone for being here. And I do want let's go forward and think about this. So there's prevention. So look around us, think about ways that we can divert and avoid and save ourselves. The second one, which I think we really, maybe our next topic is, how do we drill down on our physicality? What is it that we can do within ourselves to augment repair mechanisms? Is it, things that we've been bringing in? Leslie and I have been working on energy medicine. We are doing frequency specific microcurrents, electromagnetic pulse fields with beamer therapy, hyperbaric chamber. I think, the dark mushroom that can actually eat radiation if you have radiation exposure. We have to support those elements that may be within our reach to offset what's happening to our mitochondria, the cellular organelles, the cellular membranes. We are a quantum physics moment living, but we don't recognize, our medical system does not recognize the human body within the scope of quantum physics. We think it's all out there. And in fact, it is here deep within us. And when we begin to understand that, we begin to understand the impact. So let's all go forward, research, think, talk, chat, regenerative farming, your home, earthing, being in the ocean, ways that you can reset your body outside of the impact of walking down the street. So go forward, jump in the ice cold water. What doesn't kill you might make you stronger. And now that I know probably why I'm having all my heart issues, I'm going to go out and get my meter and check the front of my building, because I think something's happened in my home that's driving me crazy. So thank you both. And let's keep the process going forward to save all of us for a long, healthy life.
Thank
you,
you so
everybody.
much.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you very much. Take care. Good night.
Take care. Night.